There may be a few more people who jump on, and many people heard the first part of diabetes, and this is going to be the second part of diabetes. So we're assuming that most of you who are logging on at this point have a keen interest in the topic of diabetes. And for those who don't show up, they may not be so interested. Is there anybody who's new to this group who may like to share how they found out about the classes or what they might hope to get out of them?
Once we have a bigger group before you take off and start running, Charlie, I'll announce about the website, the new tutorial, and the new sign up, just in case there's a few people here that didn't get the email last week.
Yeah. That's another thing that we talked about this afternoon, is that some of the people, I told them if you didn't get an email from Scott this week to check your junk mail and go online and to livelifestylemedicine.com and check the website out and send in a request to get put on the list. So we talked about that. I'll let you talk about that again.
Great, thanks.
Mostly people who have been here before that I see, but there's a couple new names for me. Anybody have any questions that they'd like to start off with while we're giving just a couple more minutes for people to log on? It looks like Ken's talking, but you have to unmute yourself.
All right.
There you go.
I have, it's interesting to me. Okay, about, I suppose, 12 years ago, maybe longer, I was told I need to start like having one candy instead of two.
Uh-huh.
That was when I was starting to be pre-diabetic. Then I did what everybody does. I mean, not everybody, but most people. It just got worse and I didn't take it very seriously. And before I knew it, I had fatty liver. And now they tell me it's, they call it the non-alcohol originated one, just from eating so much and being, nobody thought I was overweight ever. But I've lost 75 pounds and I look good finally. I mean, I thought everybody said I looked fine before, but anyway, I'm just telling you this because now they tell me I have liver cirrhosis, which is scarring of the liver, and it's a kind of damage your liver cannot repair. And they tell me that, boy, if I don't do just tons of exercise and stay in the middle or less of my BMI and just do at least this kind of diet or paleo, I'm going to get cancer. And so I've already got cancer. So that means it's easier for me to get another one. So man, I look good. I feel good. Everything's normal on the outside, but I'm a mess inside. And it all started with fatty liver. Well, and who knows what caused prostate cancer? That's a whole nother story. So my question is, that was a lot of information last week and I couldn't absorb it all. So I tried again. I watched the whole thing again and I took a lot of notes and I just missed, I wrote it down. He goes, Scott and Dr. Greger just really got it in our heads that the fat has caused the pancreas to stop making enough insulin. And so I got all that, and then he said, and cancer, and for some reason that's blank. So what did he say about cancer after he explained what insulin resistance is?
Sure. Yeah, so high levels of insulin also promote cancer growth. So having to have more, you only want enough insulin in your blood to do the job it needs to do. And with insulin resistance, there's not only, especially when you're close to developing type 2 diabetes or have type 2 diabetes, you have high levels of sugar and insulin in your blood. And so then what ends up happening, if people that are having to inject insulin on top of, because they're not making enough, or the insulin they have is not working very well, or they're starting to not make enough, and you have to inject more insulin to actually keep your blood sugars down. That's one of the reasons that people that have insulin resistance get more cancer, and people that inject insulin end up with more cancer as well, is because insulin is not only a fat storing hormone, and it also to bring sugar into your cells, but it also, we think about insulin-like growth factor that we talk about in these classes all the time. So higher levels of insulin, if you have some cancer growing somewhere, it's going to actually make it grow more. So you don't want to have to use more insulin than you really need. So the goal then is to reverse that insulin resistance, which we talked about last week, so that you have just the right amount of insulin that you need, because we all need insulin to live. And so you want to make the insulin that you have work as well as it can, so you don't have to have excess insulin. Did that answer your question?
Basically, I controlled my diabetes without metformin almost since I was diagnosed with it. I tried metformin a while, and I test my blood a lot, and I just decided, man, it's been a long time, like 7 or 8 years. I just quit taking metformin, and there was no change. So my numbers are good without that. So it's the diet and exercise that have kept it at bay for years.
And you remember how we talked about with insulin resistance last week, that's fat being stored in the liver too. So that's the problem that you have with that. You have what's called NASH, which means now non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. So steato means fat, and hepatitis means swollen liver, basically inflammation of the liver.
Hepatitis. Oh, swollen liver. Okay.
Swollen liver, right? So hepa means liver, and itis means inflammation, and then the steato is the fat. So you don't have to remember all that. It's just that we talked about how insulin resistance is fat being stored in places that are not designed to store fat. We're not designed to store fat in our muscle cells. We're not designed to store fat in our liver. We're not designed to store fat in our pancreas. So we have a little bit there because we can burn some of it for energy, but it's not supposed to be a storage depot for fat. That's supposed to be our fat cells. And people that develop insulin resistance tend to store that fat in those places. It's not designed. That's what it does. And that's the problem, which we talked about last week there. So
I'm sorry to make you redundant, but I know I had NASH, but I didn't know what it stood for. Would you repeat that again slowly? I got the S and the H.
Yeah, non-alcoholic is the NA. Non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. NASH, NASH. So that's the number one cause of liver cancer now. It's surpassed alcohol now to take first place, is the fatty livers causing liver cancer, which is cirrhosis. Cirrhosis is just another way of saying liver cancer. It gets so scarred down. And so
Well,
so the same whole food plant-based diet that's good for reversing insulin resistance would be good to help remove excess fat from the liver too. So, but cirrhosis itself, once it's in place, can't be reversed, but you can at least maximize the liver function, the liver cells that you have, by helping get rid of the fat out of there.
Another thing you can do, Ken, is to keep doing a whole food plant-based diet, keep exercising, and not worry. It's like The doctor said, maintain your weight. Well, you've been maintaining an ideal body weight. So you're doing good. And so you should not have to worry. You're doing everything you can to ward off the evil spirits.
And don't drink alcohol either, of course.
I haven't touched it for 3 years.
Yeah, good.
I don't want to monopolize this, but I want to talk about how the hormone treatment I am on affects all this, but I could do it later.
I have a question.
Yeah.
My PCP suggested that I try this diet. I have kidney disease, but I don't see anywhere online that this diet will help kidney disease.
Well, I've had 3 patients that have shown me their lab results, and they've gone from stage 3 kidney disease to normal kidney function. That means a GFR of 40 to 50 at stage 3, kidney disease going to greater than 60 by transitioning completely to a whole food plant-based diet. So that's my personal experience. I've listened to Gregor and to others, and they've had experience with improvement in kidney function.
And this is your
Go ahead,
first
Scott.
class too. This is your first class too, right, Dorothea?
Right.
Right. So yeah, just have to stick with us, and we have a whole class dedicated to kidney disease. And if you want to see it ahead of time, we have it recorded on the class website from last year. So there's a whole class coming up on that, and it's already been recorded from last year, which you can go back and see. And then you'll eventually learn, nutritionfacts.org is a resource, and you can look up all kinds of videos and articles about what's the best way to eat for kidney disease. And there's lots of information. Just have to hang out for many classes and utilize the website and learn where to get the resources.
Thank you.
So Scott, this would be a good time. Perhaps we have 35 people to share your information about the website.
Sure. All right. Just to kind of give everyone a heads up too, if you're on the group email list, you may or may not have received my email on Sunday. I did one on Thursday and on Sunday. The reason I did one on Thursday is because I'm switching from my AOL account for the group email to a MailChimp account. And so I was starting to have some problems with it. I think it's because the group suddenly went over 1,000. My group email is over 1,000 people. And I think it must have hit some maximum because it starts to kind of hiccup a little bit when I send the emails. And so this is great timing that I got the MailChimp account. And so if you did not receive an email from me last Thursday or on Sunday morning, you need to go onto the website here at, everyone probably knows, most of you know the livelifestylemedicine.com. So it's just www.livelifestylemedicine.com is the website. And so whether you were on the email list before and didn't get an email, or if you were on the email list and did get the email, or you're new and are not on the email list, then I recommend you come to the website here, and you can either click right here, subscribe to the weekly class newsletter, or this link is the same. So these 2 links are the same. You click on it, and all you got to do is put in your email, first and last name, click subscribe, and that's it. And you'll start getting the weekly newsletter. I'm just going to call it a newsletter now because that's kind of how it's set up. So that's there. And so I recommend you do that. And then also just this morning, I went ahead and recorded, since I've made some updates to the website, I recorded a new tutorial today. So if you want to get a tour of what's all on the website, if you're not that familiar with the website, then just watch this. It's about 10 minutes long, and watch this website tutorial. So I just wanted to give you those two heads up there.
I got my email yesterday, Scott, on Monday.
Okay, good. Yeah, it was kind of hit and miss. There was one whole group on my groups that wouldn't send at all, and so I entered those emails manually. But then I heard even my wife Angela didn't get. She's in the first group, of course, and because the first group's the oldest group, from even like almost 4 years ago. And she didn't get the email, and I heard a couple other people on the Facebook group emailed or sent me a message saying, "Hey, I didn't get it, didn't get the email either." And so I think it was kind of spotty. So I just wanted to give an announcement on that, because some people may not have received it.
Someone was asking if, do they get confirmation when they sign up, or do they just have to wait until they get the email next week?
You just have to wait. Yeah, when you hit subscribe, it'll say thank you, or it kind of says something, and then yeah, you won't get a confirmation, but you'll get an email on Sunday if you've signed up since Sunday.
I have a quick question if there's time.
Yes, there is.
So I've been doing this now for about 6 weeks, and the last couple of weeks more strictly, like really paying more attention and being more disciplined about it. And a few days ago, I started getting an itchy rash, which to me looked like hives, but I'm not a doctor, so I'm not sure. It occurred to me that maybe, like you said, somebody could eliminate fats from their liver or something like that if they stay on this diet. I wonder if it could be kind of a release of toxins that's manifesting as a rash. Does that kind of thing ever happen? Like something good is happening, but it's uncomfortable for a while?
I haven't seen anybody with a rash specifically, but whether it could, if you're eating a new food or something, or new product, I mean,
No, more on eliminating things than.
yeah, I guess if it's a rash that persists, you want to see your doctor about it, because
I will.
there's so many things that could cause a rash. It's, you don't
Sure.
want to assume it's anything specific.
Yeah.
New soap, detergent, chemical, whatever it might be.
No, I thought that probably. Yeah, I didn't think you would, address the rash specifically. I just was wondering whether sometimes when things come out, it kind of looks the way it did when it went in, not so fun.
I haven't particularly seen that either.
Okay, I'll check with my doctor. Thank you.
Okay. What
What
else?
What about eating at restaurants?
That's a problematic, because unless you know the restaurant owner and you can talk to them about how they're preparing the food, you're going to get a load of salt, sugar, and fat that is probably not something that you want. So the question here is, what is your goal? First, you have to decide what your goal is. If your goal is, I want my health, I want it back, I don't want to have kidney disease, then every time you put something in your mouth, you ask yourself, is this going to help me reach my goal? And if you decide that eating out at restaurants is not a healthy option, then you'll prepare your own food, take it with you, and you'll go to restaurants with friends or family, but you'll have eaten before you go, or you will bring your own food. Unless you eat something like a microwave potato or a boiled potato that they'll make for you, or a salad, but that doesn't give you a lot of calories. So
Right.
be super careful when you're eating out and with others.
Okay.
If you want to reverse your kidney disease.
Okay.
I know it's kind of not a message that we want to hear, but it is possible to do that.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else have any thoughts or suggestions?
There's a question here. My son has type 2 and maintains whole food diet and has lost 12 pounds, which he didn't need to lose. How can you keep from losing weight on a plant-based whole food diet? You can go for it, Charlie.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, how do we know he didn't need to lose the 12 pounds? I'm sure that went through your mind too, Scott.
Yeah.
It's like we get so used to seeing people who are overweight in our country that we think someone looks like a normal weight because you compare them to their peers. And then when they lose some weight, it's like, oh, you're too thin. Well, you really need to be careful about that. Look at some of the, like Scott says, some of the old movies, some of the pictures before World War II. People were thinner and they considered that normal, but these days, not so much. You want to add anything?
Yeah, and then we talk about the body mass index. So, go on to Google and type in BMI calculator, and you type in your height and your weight. And as long as you're above 18.5, you're good. So 18.5 to 24 is normal. And so on your body mass index. And so if you're below 18.5, then we would say, yeah, you need to eat more calorie dense foods, eat more, more potatoes, more beans, more nuts and seeds, more nut butters, more avocados, some more pasta, dried fruit, things that are a little higher in calorie density if you are below 18.5. But most people, that's not going to be a problem.
There's 2 participants with raised hands, it says. So I guess I need to change the view here to see who has the raised hands in the gallery. Okay, so there's Evie and Doug first, and then Merrill. Evie and Doug.
Okay, I'm 78. I have a BMI of about 20, a body fat percentage of 15.5. I feel skinny. I don't want to get skinnier. So is that a good? I'm looking at my friends who are stockier and healthier looking. So am I good as I am?
Yeah. Did you say you were a BMI of 18.5?
No, he said 20.
And
And
a body
yeah.
fat of
So you're in the
Body fat.
normal. You're in the normal range.
a
They're
body
the ones. Your friends who are looking heavier are the ones that are probably a bit overweight.
to have a body fat of 15.5. Is that
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
The problem
That's
I
great.
have, a lot of my friends are getting cancer and
Yeah.
they get treatment, and when they're 40 pounds overweight, they lose 40 pounds. A lot of it's muscle, and they lose a lot of muscle, unfortunately. But if I lose 40 pounds, it's not good.
Well, do you have cancer?
No.
Well, then, don't give it to yourself. I mean, bottom line is enjoy your health. You have an ideal body weight and you're feeling great. And that's what you could focus your attention on,
And focus your attention on building more muscle or maintaining what muscle you have, if not even building muscle, by getting your exercise and resistance exercise and all that, so you can maintain your muscle mass. That's important too.
Okay, one other question. You said you had one on kidney disease. I have non-alcoholic fatty liver. Do you have a program on just that, like you do on kidney, or not?
We haven't done one in general, but we've taught. Many of the videos and classes over the years have addressed it for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, I just started tuning in a couple weeks ago.
Well, keep tuning in and you're going to hear a message every week. Do you know
Yeah.
what that message is?
Yeah.
Eat whole food, plant-based.
There you go.
Wow, very good.
I've listening to my wife for 2 years on this, and I'm slowly coming over to the other side.
Leaving the dark side.
Okay, thank
Oh,
you.
that's great. Okay.
Okay, I'll be quick, okay?
It's okay, Meryl.
All right.
Take your time.
This class focuses on the medical and health piece, but I really want to encourage you, Dorothea, to realize that within weeks, your taste buds are going to change, and the food you make is going to be so delicious that you can't imagine even eating out. It doesn't even interest me at this point to eat at a restaurant or at friends' homes. Just the company is what I look forward to. And the food is delicious, and there's so many websites for recipes if you want to change things up. And it is life changing once your palate changing. Everything will change once you do this for a while. And so I just wanted to put that piece out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Meryl. Keep coming to a few classes or look on the website and go to the archived classes that are interesting to you. And if you have questions, we'll talk with you one-on-one if you need to know sooner. But if you just send us an email and we can give you a call and, get you up to speed a little more quickly. Kim,
So-
you have something else to say?
I'm curious, so the videos that are archived, do they have them labeled as this is a topic here, this is a topic there?
Now let me show you real quick again here. I'll go back to the website real quick. It's good. Let me go here. So here's the home page again. And then right here, class archives. So you can click on class archives. And then right here, here's the 2022 classes. So I would recommend, since you're new, I would recommend going back to the start of the class series, January 4th, introduction class with me. And then you can watch Dr. Ross's introduction class. So usually someone that's new, I would recommend for sure watching these first two introduction classes because it kind of gives you a basic overview. And then you can see here, meal planning and preparation. And then we got classes, weight management, food addiction, these open forum formats where it's just more people talking questions, like kind of like we've been doing here so far today. And then here's some other ones, more recent ones, and then the diabetes one that we did last week, and then today. And so here's if you want that kidney disease one I mentioned earlier, you can go back here. So you see where here's all the 2022 ones, but if you go and just click on, you can either hover over it and click these other specific ones, or if you just click the actual class archives, you can see here, 2021 open forum classes. I think we have kidney disease in the 2021 core curriculum. And you can scroll down and see all the different topics here. And let's see, it might be under the open forum format. I don't see the kidney disease in this one, so I'm missing it. Yeah, it's under the forum 2021. And you can scroll down, look at all these different topics. Here you go, chronic kidney disease right here. So if you just click this, that'll take you right to that particular class. And that's all about the chronic kidney disease right there.
Great, thank you.
All right, we have a couple more comments in the chat room. We're having fun, so we're going to kind of keep going for a bit. Someone said, I've lost 70 pounds in the last year, been on plant-based diet for 6 months, and I just recorded an increase in my A1C from 5.4 to 5.7 now. What are some of the possible reasons? Some of the possible reasons might be you've increased the fats in your diet. You may be, eating a few more nuts or nuts and seeds, a little bit more avocado, a little bit more oil or whatever. That would be my first thought. And the difference between 5.4 and 5.7 could also be just a laboratory kind of glitch. Maybe the reagents in the bottle were a little lower in the machine, and so the value came out slightly differently. So those are close enough that I wouldn't be too concerned at all. What do you say, Scott?
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add refined sugar, refined flour too. Watch out for those things too. Anything processed, even though it's plant-based, if it's processed like even bread, it's high in calories, a little bit refined. So then that could also increase insulin resistance too. So.
And then Ken, as far as the androgen deprivation, the therapy, it can cause muscle loss. So you just have to work on doing resistance exercises and do the best you can. It's just one of the side effects of that treatment. There's no other special foods that you're going to eat that's going to make a difference here. Just do resistance training, like a Bowflex is what I use, and you could use free weights
I
You
do
could go-
plenty.
What's that?
I do plenty.
Well, that's the best that you can do. You just keep
But,
doing that.
I didn't get to finish my chat. In fact, I'm surprised it came through already because I'm still writing it. Uh,
Okay, well, I'll
let me
address
finish
it. I'll address it with you a little later also.
Okay, so I'll go back to finish it.
Okay. Let's see. I want to, do we have any other questions from anybody?
I just have a quick comment.
Of course, Velvet, we've been waiting for you.
Hi, I missed you guys last week.
Okay, we missed you too.
Anyways, I know that some people still like to eat out. I still like to eat out from time to time. So
Yes,
just a quick suggestion for Dorothea, if you like to eat out, look at the restaurant's menu before you go and plan ahead on what they have. And I do that every time I go out to eat. And here, I live in Medford, so there's a whole food plant-based restaurant that had opened last year, and they do really well. And you can, in most restaurants that do whole food plant-based or that are vegan, you can call and ask their ingredients and how they cook their food, and they're really nice about it. So that's just a suggestion. If you're gonna do this and you do want to go out to eat sometimes, just call the restaurant ahead and see what they have, or look at the menu.
Thank you.
You're
Good
welcome.
advice. Yeah.
Because you don't have to, completely stay home and like shelter yourself, but do go out with friends and stuff still. Anyways, that's all.
thank you, Velvet.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Anybody else? Pick a,
I second Velvet's comment. This is Debbie, and especially the calling. People have always been very nice when I call, and it's kind of fun to sort of educate them a little bit that there's people, there's people out there that would like to go out to eat and want to be able to get whole food plant-based. So it works both ways, I feel like.
Yeah,
okay,
the more we ask and accommodate, and the more of us there are, the more normal it becomes, right? Change the culture.
Yeah, and
Yep.
chain restaurants aren't the best. So, but I also like when I go to smaller restaurants that don't really have a lot of options, then I'll suggest to them like, hey, you guys should really put something on your menu.
Well, Taco Bell has done something that makes it difficult to stay away. And now you go custom make whatever you want. So you can get a bean cheese burrito and hold the cheese, and you could go al fresco and have the cheese replaced with tomatoes. You can kick off anything you don't want, like sour cream. So I know the salt's probably still a concern, but you can you can remove the refried beans and replace them with black beans. So you can do a lot of things in an effort to stay, can I use the word legal? I know the biggest thing I don't like is they don't have whole wheat tortillas. But I can do a lot of things with that new kiosk to eliminate a lot of fat and a lot of salt.
And Chipotle is a good option too. You can custom your burritos and bowls and things at Chipotle.
remember, Ken, the shell, the burrito or the taco shell is a lot of refined flour, and it's, not only the salt, but oftentimes there's a fair amount of fat if you're not, watching that. So think about that. If you're eating out of a bowl, like you eat at the Yum restaurant or something, you don't have that extra refined stuff, except for the Yum sauce, which you may want to cut in half or a third.
I find that when I eat at restaurants, I do better if I order off the side dishes. Then you
Yeah.
could order beans or baked potato or steamed veggies. Often restaurants will have things like that, and you can make a meal out of those.
Okay, There's some extraneous noise, so we're gonna have to mute everybody here for a moment, or we're gonna try to, there, it sounds like we just have got everybody muted almost. And there's no extraneous noise. Thanks. Just remember when you unmute to mute yourself again, because it does add some chatter into the room as best as you can. Thank you. Okay, so I want to start out today's session. We'll have time for more questions, I suspect, as time goes on. I want to start out the meeting. I had hoped that Stu and Sharon Stephen could come to today's meeting, but they sent me an email just this afternoon, said, sorry, we'll be unable to sign in tonight. We're in Roseburg and don't have zero service, staying at a campground. Please tell Stu's story. And she gave me some notes about Stu. Stu Stevens is a type 1 diabetic. He had been told at a very early age that he had diabetes type 1 and that he was probably going to not live past more than 20 years. Well, the 20 years came, and then 30 years and 40 years. And in the back of his mind, he thought every year that went by, it was like he was lucky to still be alive. So he came, his wife brought him to one of my classes in Roseburg about 8 or 9 years ago. I guess it's 7 years ago, because he's 7 years whole food plant-based. But he came kind of kicking, biting, screaming. He says, I've learned everything I need to know about diabetes and there's nothing I can do about it. And so he listened to Gregor and the science, and he decided to change what he was eating along with his wife. He was 50 years at that time, a diabetic type 1. And he was on a number of different medications, high blood pressure medicines, cholesterol lowering medicines, diabetic medicines, along with insulin. And he now, after being 7 years on whole food plant-based, is now no medicines except a dose of insulin. And what he said is when he went completely whole food plant-based from sort of day one. He came to a couple classes. His wife said, we're going to do this. They did it. And within a couple days, he said, he noticed he had to start reducing the dose of insulin he was taking. And he reduced his dose over the next several weeks to about a third of what he had been taking. Now, insulin is not a cheap drug, and he said he saved a couple $100 a month at that time, 7 years ago. And so that has happened with others also. Right now, he's taking none of the other medicines he used to take, the high blood pressure medicines, the cholesterol lowering medicines, the all the other medicines are gone. His lipids are super normal right now. He's healthy and he's active. He lost 60 pounds, which he thought was just his normal body weight. That's how it was going to be. Without any effort, changing from the standard American diet to a whole food plant-based diet. And by the way, as I recall, he talks about how his vision was a bit blurry at times, and that cleared up once he transitioned. And he had this foot pain, which wouldn't go away for years until he transitioned. He's got a wonderful story. He tells that he gets tears in his eyes at times because he got his life back. And he no longer believes that what he was told was the facts, that he only had a certain length of time on this earth. So I wanted to share that story with you, and fortunately, they wanted me to share it too. Now I want to share my screen and go to a first video. And this is plant-based diets recognized by the Diabetic Association. And some of this, you may say, Well, didn't we hear that when Scott was talking about it? Some of it, yes. Maybe little different words. We're trying to reinforce you, and particularly for the new people, we want to kind of bring home the key issues here. So let's take a look. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Dr. Kim Williams, immediate past president of the American College of Cardiology, started out an editorial on plant-based diets with the classic Schopenhauer quote that all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as like, duh, of course. In 2013, plant-based diets for diabetes were in the ridiculed stage in the official endocrinology practice guidelines, placed in the fad diets section. They acknowledged strictly plant-based diets have been shown to reduce the risk for type 2 diabetes and improve management of diabetes better than the American Diabetes Association recommendations, but then inexplicably go on to say that the evidence doesn't support the use of one type of diet over another with respect to diabetes or in general. The best approach for a healthy lifestyle is simply the amelioration of unhealthy choices, whatever the heck that means. But by 2015, the clinical practice guidelines from the same professional associations explicitly endorsed as their general recommendation for diabetic patients a plant-based diet. Times they are a-changin'. The American Diabetes Association itself is also now on board, listing it as one of the dietary patterns acceptable for the management of the condition. But the Canadian Diabetes Association has really taken the lead. Type 2 diabetes is considered one of the fastest-growing diseases in Canada, representing a serious public health concern, so they're not messing around, recommending plant-based diets for disease management because of their potential to improve body weight and blood sugar control, as well as heart disease risk, in addition to reducing the need for diabetes medications. They use the Kaiser Permanente definition, a regimen that encourages whole plant-based foods and discourages meats, dairy, and eggs, as well as all refined and processed junk. They recommend diabetes education centers in Canada improve patients' perceptions of plant-based diets by developing educational materials and providing individualized counseling sessions to address what barriers people have to eating plant-based. The biggest barrier identified was ignorance. Nearly 9 out of 10 patients interviewed had never even heard of using a plant-based diet to treat diabetes. Why is that? Maybe patient awareness of the benefits are being influenced by the perception of the diabetes educators and clinicians. See, most of the staff were aware, yet only about 1 in 3 were currently recommending it. Why not? One of the common reasons given was that they didn't think their patients would do it, so they didn't even bring it up. But this notion is contrary to the patient survey results they cite, in which most patients said they would be willing to at least give it a try. The researchers cite the PCRM Geico studies I did videos about, in which strictly plant-based diets were well accepted, with an over 95% adherence rate, presumably because they just felt so much better, increased energy, better digestion, better sleep and satisfaction. A number of staff members also expressed their second reason for not recommending this diet, not being clear about the supportive scientific evidence, but has been shown to be more effective than an American Diabetes Association recommended diet at reducing the use of diabetes medication, long-term blood sugar control, and cholesterol. It's therefore possible that the diabetes educators were simply behind the times, as there's a lag time in dissemination of new scientific findings from the literature to the clinician and finally to the patient. That's one of the reasons I started nutritionfacts.org, to speed up the process. As Dr. Williams put it, the evidence for the benefits of plant-based nutrition continues to mount. This now includes lower rates of stroke, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, heart attacks, and cardiac death, as well as many non-cardiac issues that affect our patients in cardiology, ranging from cancer to a variety of inflammatory conditions. The science we got. The bigger challenge is overcoming the inertia, culture, and habit, and widespread marketing of unhealthy foods. He concludes, reading the existing scientific literature and evaluating the impact of plant-based nutrition clearly represents the single most important yet underutilized opportunity to reverse the pending obesity and diabetes-induced epidemic of disease and death.
Any thoughts about that? I see there's a couple questions in the chat.
I think that's such an important video because it's something I didn't really cover last week, just about how you understand the science behind insulin resistance, and that's what I really focused on, and how that works. But then this is so important to realize that, well, if this science is out there, how come it's not common in practice? And I think the very first part of that video Dr. Greger talked about was how first you get doubt and then ridicule before acceptance. So it has to go through these stages, and I think that's so important to kind of remember out of that video.
So I'm kind of curious as to, from the gallery's point of view, have any of you had the doubt stage if in trying to transition? Have you been ridiculed? Or has this been embraced as the right thing for you to do?
Speak up.
I had a close friend of mine tell me that I was getting too skinny too quick.
Yeah, you were getting too healthier too quick. Kind of shook their foundation. Like it kind of.
They didn't think it was.
Go ahead and unmute again. They didn't think what?
They didn't think it was healthy that I was losing this kind of weight. It really bothered them.
Yeah.
Funny thing is they're on the keto diet.
Yeah, and so the one study that we have, that a nuclear med study, it shows decreased blood flow after a year to your heart on the keto diet, and lesser life expectancy. So I wish them well, but I hope they learn the science soon. Evie and Doug.
Yeah, I was going to say a follow-up. I was concerned about getting cancer, and I'm so skinny, I'd lose more weight. Being partially on vegan diet, I've lost maybe 10 pounds over the last year or so. And when I go to church about every other Sunday, one of my good friends says, well, you keep losing weight, you don't look good. And he's a little overweight, but about 10 years ago, he got cancer, and he has cancer again.
Yeah. So there's a cartoon that we show where people are saying, so where do you get your protein when you're eating this way? And in that it says, so this person who's asking the question has high blood pressure and diabetes and heart trouble, and they're asking, where do you get your protein? Totally ignoring the fact that they are much sicker and that there possibly is a much better way. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and being overweight and obese is an independent risk factor for cancer. So partly because of the insulin resistance, and fat stores excess hormone. So it's we could go into a lot more detail on that as well, but you have excess testosterone, excess estrogen, it gets stored in the fat tissue, and then a low fiber diet like a keto diet that tends to be low in fiber, you can't get rid of the excess hormones down the toilet either, because you need the excess estrogen and testosterone that your body doesn't need gets sent down into your colon to glom onto fiber and to go flush down the toilet. But if you're eating a standard American diet or even a low carb diet that's really high in fat and low in fiber, you're not going to be able to get rid of those excess hormones, which also increases your risk for cancer.
My wife's probably shared this in the past, but she had horrible inflammation for several years as a result of carpal tunnel syndrome surgery. And she had 2 weeks after going on this whole food plant-based, she completely recovered from it. She could not make a bed. She couldn't brush her teeth. And she could no longer ride her bike. She was an avid cyclist. She couldn't squeeze the brakes. And in 2 weeks, and they mentioned inflammation in that video, I say it was miraculous.
You know, it's testimonials like yours that are probably more important than Scott and I standing up and trying to egg you on to to keep doing this, or to do it even more, whatever you're doing, and to encourage your friends and family to do it. Talking about friends and family, there is another question in the chat, and it says, I have 2 athletic grands. I guess that's grandchildren. Question, how to get enough calories to have enough protein? The athletic kids are 5 and 8. Well, there are a number of kids that have been raised in plant-based worlds, and they get enough protein if you're eating enough calories for the day. Kids find foods that they like, and they like beans, they like rice, they like potatoes, they actually like fruit and some vegetables, actually, especially if they've been eating them and the whole family is eating them. You can make it fun for them by cutting it into various shapes. You can have them participate in preparing foods. You can be, to get more beans in them, which are a higher calorie density food. You can add celery with a dip, or you can add carrots with a dip. And, there are various techniques that you can use if you have kids who are not really interested in eating. But generally, if the kids are in our country, generally they have plenty of opportunity to eat enough food. And so I wouldn't be encouraging necessarily to eat more nuts and seeds, although that's one option to keep weight on if they're very, very athletic and they are burning a lot of calories. Any other thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, I would just say watch the Game Changers documentary on Netflix. That shows a bunch of professional athletes, NFL football players, NBA basketball players, ultra endurance athletes, weightlifters, power lifters that are all eating whole food plant-based diets. So watch that, the Game Changers on Netflix. And then in 3 weeks from tonight, we have our pediatrician from Oregon Medical Group, Dr. Eric Colgrove, who will be doing a lecture specifically on plant-based diets for pediatrics and families. So stay tuned for that as well.
Okay, so now we're on to the next video, and the best diet for diabetes.
There are all sorts of different scoring systems to rate diet quality. My favorite, for its simplicity, is the Dietary Phytochemical Index, a fancy name for a simple concept. It's just the percentage of your calories from whole plant foods, so 0 to 100. The average American diet has a score of 12 out of 100. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, our diet is a 1. You can split people up based on how they score and show how the higher you score, the better your metabolic markers when it comes to diabetes risk. There appears to be like this stepwise drop in insulin resistance and insulin-producing beta cell dysfunction as you eat more and more plant-based. And that highest group was only scoring about 30. Less than a third of their diet was whole plant foods, but better than the lowest, which was down around the standard American diet. No wonder. Diets centered around plants, emphasizing legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, and discouraging most or all animal products, are especially potent in preventing type 2 diabetes, and as a little bonus, has been associated with much lower rates of obesity, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, cardiovascular mortality, and cancer. And not just preventing type 2 diabetes, but treating it as well. A systematic review and meta-analysis found that the consumption of vegetarian diets is associated with improved blood sugar control. But how much improved? Here's one of the latest trials. The effect of a strictly plant-based diet centered around brown rice, it was done in Asia, versus the conventional diabetic diet on blood sugar control of patients with type 2 diabetes, a 12-week randomized clinical trial. For the diabetic control diet, they set up food exchanges and calculated specific calorie and portion controls, whereas on the plant-based diet, people could eat as much as they want. That's one of the benefits. The emphasis is on food quality rather than quantity, and they still actually lost more weight. But even after controlling for the greater abdominal fat loss in the plant-based group, they still won out. Of course, it only works if you actually do it, but those that pretty much stuck to the healthier diet dropped their A1C levels 0.9%, which is what you get taking the leading diabetes drug, but of course only with good side effects. Yeah, but would it work in an underserved population? The impact of a plant-based diet support program on mitigating type 2 diabetes in San Bernardino, the poorest city of its size in California. A randomized controlled trial, but not of a plant-based diet itself, as the title suggests, but of just an education program telling people about the benefits of a plant-based diet for diabetes, and then it was up to them. And still got a significant improvement in blood sugar control. Here are the numbers. Got a little better in the control group, but way better in the plant-based instruction and support group. And more plant-based diets are not just effective in the prevention and management of diabetes, but also its complications. Check this out. One of the most devastating complications of diabetes is kidney failure. This shows the decline in kidney function in 8 diabetics in the 1 or 2 years before switching their diets. They all showed this steady, inexorable decline on a fast track to complete kidney failure and dialysis. But then they switched to a special supplemented vegan diet, and their kidney decline was stopped in its tracks. Imagine if they had switched a year or two earlier. Most diabetics don't actually end up on dialysis, though, because they die first. Cardiovascular disease is the major cause of premature mortality among diabetics. That's why plant-based diets are perfect. There's a general scientific consensus that the elements of a whole food plant-based diet, legumes, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts with limited or no intake of processed foods and animal products, are highly beneficial for preventing and treating type 2 diabetes. Equally important, plant-based diets address the bigger picture by simultaneously treating cardiovascular disease, our #1 killer, along with obesity, high blood pressure, lowering inflammation, and we can throw cancer into the mix too, our #2 killer. The bottom line is that the case for using a plant-based diet to reduce the burden of diabetes and improve overall health has never been stronger.
Kind of a similar message. Any thoughts from anybody?
I need to hear that every day. So I don't make mistakes.
Well, that's, you can hear this every day. You go to nutritionfacts.org and listen to Gregor every day.
He needs to talk a little slower so I can get it too.
You can actually read it on his site.
Do what?
You can actually read what he's saying.
Yeah, I know. It goes fast also.
Well, let me share my...
It's okay. I get the gist. I know what I need to do, but I'm not perfect. That's the problem.
Well, we all do the best that we can. Just keep focusing on what your goal is. And
Oh yeah, I know.
time.
I put the list up every day, and I'm
That's-
trying to get as best as I can on it. But you know what? Every once in a while I get weakness. Like the other day, I got a chocolate covered. No, what is it? Chocolate chip cookie.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't eat one of them. I had to eat 5 of them. And
Yeah.
I'm in trouble. But now I'm trying to be a good girl again. I'm all plant-based again.
So welcome to the human race, huh?
I know. Unfortunately, yeah. But
You-
I'm I'm trying to get always back in line again, so yeah.
Well, know that there's no policeman here. No one is going to judge you for what you choose to do, but we are going to keep encouraging you to focus on your goal and ask yourself while you had that first cookie in your hand to say, is this really going to help me, get to the goal that I'm trying to reach?
Says go for it.
What about tea?
Tea is healthy.
Okay.
It's a good choice.
Especially green
Excellent.
tea.
Green teas or any herbal teas are really excellent choices.
Good. I just had some today. Usually I drink distilled water.
Yeah. All right, I've got one last video, which is a little longer. It's 18 minutes. It's by Dr. Bernard, Neil Bernard. I always love listening to him. He's got a good way of putting things, and I think it sums up a lot. I have a few more videos to share, which we're not going to get to this week, but maybe next week, depending on the questions. I love the questions this week, so I'm not disappointed by any means. It's been a really good group of for questions and stuff. But let me share the screen and play Tackling Diabetes with a Bold New Dietary Approach. This is a few years old, but it still is bold and new for a lot of medical providers.
Today, I'd like to talk about turning around an epidemic. 100 million Americans right now do have either diabetes or pre-diabetes, and that puts them at risk for amputations, for heart disease, for blindness, and we're exporting this epidemic overseas. Now, the word epidemic comes from Old Greek. Epi means on, demos means people. So an epidemic is something that we study with sterile statistics and maps and graphs, but the truth is it's something that impinges directly on people, on living, breathing human beings. But my story actually starts in the basement of a Minneapolis hospital. The year before I went to medical school, I was the morgue attendant, or as I like to say, the autopsy assistant. What that meant was whenever anybody died, I would bring the body out of the cooler and put the body on an examination table, and the pathologist would come into the room. And one day, a person died in the hospital of a massive heart attack, probably from eating hospital food, but that's another story. So to examine the heart, you have to remove a section of ribs. And this is not done with great delicacy. You take what looks like a garden clipper, and you go crunch, crunch, crunch through the ribs on this side, and crunch, crunch.
What
did you do?
I turned it off, and
What happened?
Your screen's not shared anymore, you're wondering?
I had to mute everybody here. And now I'll go back.
Carotid arteries going to the brain, the arteries going to the legs, the arteries going to the kidneys, they all had this hardening of the arteries, this atherosclerosis. He said, we see the beginnings of this in 2/3 of people by age 23, which happened to be the exact age that I was at the time. So anyway, so anyway, what I take from it never turned around. It was always considered a kind of food, diabetes, like Japan, for example, considered a progressive disease. But there were two scientific discoveries that really turned all of this around. And the first one was taking the widest possible lens. If you look around the world at those countries that have the least diabetes, like Japan, for example, they weren't following anything like the diet that we were giving to diabetic patients. They weren't saying, gee, I'm not going to eat rice, I won't eat noodles. They eat this kind of food all the time. It's front and center on their plate. And the second discovery came from looking inside the cell, especially the muscle cell. And the reason we look at muscle cells in particular is that's where glucose is going. That's where blood sugar is going. That's the fuel that powers your movement. You know about a person who's running a marathon? What are they doing in the weeks leading up for it? They're carbo loading. So they're eating pasta and they're eating bread to try to get that glucose into the cell for energy. And that is the problem in diabetes. Because glucose is there outside the cell trying to get inside. In order to get in, it needs a key, and that key is insulin. Now, what if I get home and I'm getting up to my front door and I take my key out of my pocket, I put it in the front door. Wait a minute, it's not working. And there's nothing wrong with my key, but I look in the lock, and while I was gone, somebody put chewing gum in my lock. So what am I going to do? Crawl in and out the window? No, I'm going to clean out the lock. Well, when a person has diabetes, their insulin key is not working. Why would that be? Why could insulin not signal this? What's supposed to happen is the glucose is supposed to enter into the cell. And glucose is the key that makes that happen. But the reason it doesn't happen, it's not that there's chewing gum inside the cell. What there is fat. Fat, little globules of fat. Now, I have to say, doctors hate words like fat. It's got one syllable. So we want to call it intramyocellular lipid. Intra means inside. Myo means muscle. Cellular means cellular. Lipid means fat. Intramyocellular lipid is fat inside your muscle cells. And that is what interferes with insulin's ability to work like a key to signal glucose coming in. Now, in 2003, the National Institutes of Health gave my research team a grant and said, let's test something completely different. Instead of limiting breads and all of these kinds of things, what if fat is the issue, what if we have a diet that has effectively no fat in it? Well, where does fat come from? It comes from two sources, animal products, animal fat, and vegetable oils. So we brought in 99 people, and we asked them to do two things. To really eat a bounty of food, not worrying about quantity. We're not counting calories here. We are not counting carb grams or anything like that. What we're doing instead is we're setting the animal product aside, keeping the vegetable oils low. Very simple. Now, one of our participants was a man named Vance. And Vance's father was dead by age 30. Vance was 31 when he was diagnosed with diabetes. He was in his late 30s when he came to see us. And he said, this is not hard. Unlike every other diet he'd been on, we didn't care how many carbs he ate or how many calories or how many portions. If he was having chili, not a meat chili, it would be a bean chili, chunky vegetable chili. If he was having spaghetti, instead of a meat topping, it would be topped with artichoke hearts and wild mushrooms and chunky tomato sauce and that kind of thing. Very, very easy. Over a course of about a year, he lost 60 pounds. His blood sugar came down and down and down. And one day his doctor sat him down and said, Vance, I know you've had family members die of this disease, but as I look at your blood tests, you don't have it anymore. And can you imagine what that feels like, to have family members who felt this was absolutely a one-way street and to have the disease just turn around? And when I asked Vance's permission to tell you about his story, he said, make sure you tell everybody that my erectile dysfunction went away too. Okay, write that down. Okay, so we published our findings in peer-reviewed journals. The American Diabetes Association now cites it and accepts this as an effective approach. And people around the world started using this. And I heard from a man in England who wanted to let me know about his experience. He had had diabetes, tried all kinds of diets without a lot of success. And then he heard about our approach, tried it for several weeks, went to the doctor drew a number of blood tests. And he got home, the phone rang. It's the doctor's office. Could you come back right now? So good heavens, what's in my blood tests? And he races into his car and he's driving to the doctor's office thinking, what disease did they discover on my blood test? What did they find? And he runs into the doctor's office. They say, we need you to sit down. Explain exactly what you've been doing. All traces of his diabetes were gone. The doctor said, your blood tests are better than mine, and I don't have diabetes. How is this possible? The doctor explained to him that we can never say that a person has been cured of diabetes because we all know that's not possible. But technically, it's not there. And the doctor was skeptical. He said, come back in 2 months. I want to test you again. Never came back. Now, wait a minute. Diabetes is genetic, right? It runs in families. And there, in fact, are genes for diabetes. But this is an important thing to remember. Genes are in two categories. Certain genes are dictators. I'm talking about the genes that say blue eyes or brown hair. They are dictators. They give orders. You can't argue. But the genes for diabetes are committees. They're making suggestions. And you could say, well, wait a minute. I don't really think I want to have diabetes. And in fact, most disease genes, whether it's for heart disease or diabetes or hypertension, certain forms of cancer, even Alzheimer's disease, they're not dictators, they're committees. And their activity depends on what we put into our bodies. So what I'm saying is that we're putting into our bodies foods that we're really not designed for, which raises the question, what foods are we really designed for? Well, there are different ways of looking at this, and one is called the dental test. Do you know the dental test? What you do is you wait for your cat to yawn, and you look in your cat's mouth, and what you notice is in his mouth are these very, very long protruding canine teeth, and on each side of his mouth, it's just like a pitchfork that's really good for capturing prey, killing small animals, and ripping the hide off the flesh and eating meat. So now look at your own mouth. What you discover is that your canine teeth are no longer than your incisors. And that change occurred at least 3.5 million years ago. So our molars are really good for crunching on an apple. They're not so hot for handling roadkill. Now there's the bunny test. Do you know the bunny test? You take a bunny, and you put the bunny in front of your cat. And what you discover, no matter how young your cat is, the cat has this irrepressible desire to capture, attack, kill, and swallow that bunny. Now, you put the very same bunny in front of a toddler or a baby. And what you discover is that toddlers say, bunny, bunny, they want to play, and the little baby is just absolutely delighted. The idea of killing him and eating him would never occur to them in a million years. We're learning something here. Do you know the box test? You take a box that was used to carry electronic equipment, and you look around in the bottom, and what you find is silica gel. And silica gel is there to take moisture out of the box. And apparently, the manufacturers of silica gel have realized that human beings are so indiscriminate in our eating habits that they have to put these words on their do not eat. So here's how I put this together. Human beings are naturally herbivores, but we're really easily thrown off track. So now, the fact of the matter is, before the Stone Age, people would have been just terrible hunters. Real. You know this is true because we're not very quick. Now, a lion is quick. A lion can capture easily. In the forest, a lion can easily catch a gazelle. A hawk or an owl can easily catch a mouse. Humans, we sort of catch cold. That's like it. We don't really detect prey very well. We don't have sensitive noses. If you look at a dog has a very highly developed sense of smell. They can detect prey at long distances, which is why they are used in airports to detect bombs and drugs and that kind of thing. And their sense of hearing far outstrips ours. They are outfitted to be able to detect prey. Now, human beings, we have cute noses and we have cute ears, but we really are pathetic as hunters. And if you're going to succeed as a carnivore, you need good sharp claws, good sharp teeth. You need to be very, very quick, and you need to have sensitive hearing, sensitive smell, sensitive vision. Which actually raises the question, what is the most sensitive part of the human body? What do you think? Well, I actually learned the answer. As I was coming here, I was at the airport, and the TSA agent pulled me aside and he said, I got to do a pat down, but when I get to a sensitive part of your body, I'll use the back of my hand. And I realized that apparently the most sensitive part of the human body must be our backside, I guess. So anyway, what I take from this is that meat eating began somehow. How did it begin? I put that question to Richard Leakey. And Richard Leakey, the famous paleoanthropologist, and what he said was, you know, human beings as herbivores, you don't have to be quick, you don't have to be particularly sharp or sensitive, because you don't really have to sneak up on a strawberry. It's just sitting there, it's not doing anything. But to become carnivores really took some work. And it probably started as scavenging. In other words, a lion doesn't eat everything. When they walk away from the little pile of bones they've left, there's a little meat there, and humans could relatively easily sneak in and cut some of that off and take it back. Now, that requires having some tools to do that with. So once the Stone Age arrived, then we had the possibility of actually doing that. And once we had arrowheads and axes and that sort of thing, then we were really onto something. Meat eating really became a big thing. But we have pre-Stone Age bodies. To this day, when a person puts into their body plant foods, their arteries open up again. Their diabetes starts to get better. Their weight starts to come off. Their body starts to recover. Now, Americans, unfortunately, are really not on the diabetes reversal diet. Americans today eat more than 1 million animals per hour. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say that 1 in 3 kids born in the year 2000 and in the years since is going to get diabetes at some point in their life. And you see the truth of it. Turn on the television. Half the commercials are for burgers, chicken wings, snack foods. The other half of the commercials are for medicines to undo the effects of all the foods that we're eating. So that's where we are. And what if it happened that instead of 100 million Americans having diabetes or pre-diabetes, what if all 100 million have diabetes itself, or more people than that, and all of them need medicines and testing and hospital care and so forth? Financially, it's a disaster. But personally, the personal cost is just incalculable. Now, I think we're starting to turn the corner. My family has promoted meat for generation after generation after generation. However, in 2004, we reached a peak at 201.5 pounds of meat. That's what the average person consumed in that year. And in the subsequent years, it's dropped and dropped and dropped. We're now under 190, and hopefully that downward trend will continue. But to this day, doctors, dietitians, nurses, they will say diabetes is a one-way street. It never goes away. But that was before we looked around the world and saw, there are dietary patterns that are more healthful. And that was before we realized that looking inside the cell, we can understand how this occurs, and we can understand how to reverse this process. And it was before we realized that patients will make bigger changes than we gave them credit for. So families like mine that have been selling meat for generations, instead, maybe we can sell carrots and asparagus and sweet potatoes and beans. And hopefully the autopsy room will be more neglected than ever because people are going to live longer and they're going to live better. And maybe the hospital cafeteria, instead of serving ribs, could serve a bounty of healthful foods. And instead of studying epidemics, maybe we can celebrate a resurgence of health. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that little glitch in the beginning there. So any thoughts from anybody about this? I always love listening to Dr. Bernard. I don't see any more comments in the chat room. It seems like everybody got it out early on this week. But
Charlie, I've been wanting to say this. When I was cut my thumb and I was seeing a wound therapist, we were talking about the whole food plant-based diet. And she said, well, you got to make sure you get lots of protein. And I love that statement. And, be careful, make sure you get lots of protein.
yeah,
And of course, she was suggesting meats and that kind of thing. And I asked her, and I love to ask friends when they tell me, you're not getting enough protein. I ask them, where's the cow get its protein? Where's the elephant get their protein? Where's the hippopotamus get their protein? They all eat greens. I says, when you eat the cow, you're just eating the go-between. The protein's in the greens, not in the cow. So,
very good.
She was kind of set back by my asking her that, but
Also set back because it healed so fastly.
yeah, it healed.
Fastly's not a word.
So
but healed.
fastly,
Yeah, fastly's not a word, but
but anyway, I wanted to say that earlier, and I just had to get it out, and so I took the opportune time.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to add?
You
So
know,
that-
last time we were trying to talk about BMI. I got the BMI, it's 22.30. That's pretty
So-
good for the mistakes I made.
Yeah, so that's a good BMI, actually.
Yeah. But
So-
that doesn't mean I gotta make mistake deliberately, no.
No.
But you know, it doesn't get away from that. I'm still sticking to the plant food, but like I said, I'm imperfect. And yeah, this is what happens.
Yeah.
I try to do less and less with that, you know. Eventually I'm gonna master it. I have
Yeah.
hope that.
Each of us have different roads to travel. Some of us go a more direct route. Some of us go around and enjoy the scenery a bit more. You know, there's no one to say right or wrong. It's if you're getting the benefits you want, you do how you want. And if you ask advice, you're not getting the benefits you want. You know what I'm going to tell you? I'm going to tell you keep focusing on getting more whole plant foods and less the animal products and the refined oils.
Oh, by the way, the liver, remember you said to feed it to the rats and mice?
Yes,
I
we
cut it
said
up,
that.
Two slices, I cut the rest of it up and got it outside, and the blackbirds got it.
Okay. Good.
So no more. It was gone, it's gone. I don't buy it. No way.
Good for you.
But I only ate one piece, and you know, I'm glad you said that, because I would have never gotten that idea. Okay, maybe somebody, I thought a cat would eat it. I saw the birds ate it.
That's a good story. I
Wait.
like it.
I have a question about, I'm hearing stuff about oils. So what are good oils, like, olive oil? Or what?
Scott, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so you don't want, as we talked about at the beginning of class, I think I don't know if you heard that oil is just the fat equivalent of sugar. So it's just a highly processed food. It has no nutrient value whatsoever, and it causes inflammation. It's just 100% fat. It's not going to help you achieve health. And so, yeah, if you're asking a question about, so there are no good oils is the answer to your question, but if you were to compare oils, it's like, you know, is it better to get shot or stabbed? Well, it's better to get stabbed than shot because you have a better chance of surviving getting stabbed than getting shot. But you know, so olive oil would be a better choice than, say, coconut oil or palm kernel oil or, you know, some of those. And so because it has less saturated fat than the coconut oil, for example. So if you're comparing, you know, two bad things, it's the better of the two bad things. And so that answers that part of the question, but ultimately you don't want to use any oil because oil is a highly processed food, and especially if you're trying to lose weight or causes inflammation in the arteries, and we could go on and on about the negative health effects of oil. So we want to get rid of the oil, the refined processed foods, and try to eat as many unprocessed whole plant foods as we can.
Now, I know what Scott just said causes confusion in you. Because what you've been told by your dietitians and the providers you've attended, and you see in the news and you read about that oils and the Mediterranean diet and the fish oils and the olive oils are all healthy choices.
No, they're not.
But they're not. But that's the message. That's some of the myth that we live under. And so when you hear this message that Scott just got done telling you, you find that's unsettling, uncomfortable, I suspect. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then it becomes, who do I believe? I mean, who am I supposed to believe? This is so dang confusing because, you know, for months and years, I've been taught and told olive oil is a healthy choice. You know, I get it, but all we can do is, like Scott recommended, keep coming to these classes, keep listening to the science, and make a decision over a period of time. You know, we were skeptical when we first started doing this ourselves. And if you
And the other,
listen, if you listen to the early introductory lessons, Scott was doing something totally different and I was doing different. And it took us a while to get here.
yeah, and you also learn, I was just gonna say, you also learn that, just to kind of build on the message I communicated earlier, is just that, so fish, for example, has some of the healthy fats in it, right? And so fish is healthier than bacon and sausage, right? So it's kind of like every food, whether a food or an ingredient or something in a food is healthy or not, well, compared to what? It's always going to be, well, compared to what? And so is olive oil healthier than coconut oil? Yes, the answer is yes, but that doesn't make olive oil healthy. Is olive oil healthy compared to whole plant foods? No, not even close. So it's kind of like, and again, you know, the Mediterranean diet, for example, eating some fish and some low fat dairy and some olive oil and stuff, what the science really shows is, well, that if you are eating some low fat dairy, some fish and some olive oil with lots of whole plant foods, that is a much healthier diet than a standard American diet. So you're making an improvement by doing that. So by saying, yeah, I'm switching from bacon, eggs, and sausage and cheese to eating some fish, a little bit of olive oil, and a little bit of low fat dairy with tons of fruits and vegetables and beans and whole grains. Wow, you just made a huge improvement in your diet. But if you're eating that kind of a diet and you still have high blood pressure, you still have diabetes, you still have high cholesterol, you're still on medications, then we'd say, well, okay, well, let's get rid of the fish, let's get rid of the low fat dairy, let's get rid of the oil. And let's just stick with the whole plant foods, because that, again, that's another step. That's what the science supports is going to bring you a better chance of reaching your health goals. And so it's always going to be, you start where you are and you're going to move in the direction of a whole food plant-based diet the best that you can. And, you know, depending on what your health concerns are, health issues are, whether you do it kind of slowly and kind of transition like I did, or if you go all in like Charlie did because his wife wanted to reverse heart disease, then, you know, it's going to be a different path for everybody. But we can help you achieve your health goals, and that's what it's all about.
Virgil, Maryland.
Yeah, you know, I was raised on bacon grease. You know, that's why I learned to cook. But since we switched, we use vegetable stock a lot. It works great for stir fries or whatever we have a cast iron wok that we use, and it doesn't stick real bad. It doesn't, I mean, you always have some, but you use some high heat and the vegetable stock, you can cook just everything. I'm not saying just about everything. You can cook everything.
And the steel spatula, yep.
And so vegetable stock is great. I use a little water more than Marilyn, I think, but because she learned the vegetable stock, but that works great.
And I found some tofu recipes in lasagna where you mix tofu with nutritional yeast, and it textures just about like ricotta. And coming from the Italian neighborhood, I was real happy. No mozzarella, and I got ricotta and spinach in my lasagna. It was really good. We were all surprised, pleasantly so.
That's
you can replace the oils. It just takes some practice to doing it.
Yeah.
I see a hand raised, Dolly.
Well, speaking of oils, just for clarity, I get the peanut butter at Whole Foods that's no sugar, no salt. It's just smushed peanuts. And there's nothing added to it except, I think, the oil that's coming out of the peanuts. Is that still an okay food?
No. So that's correct. Though it's not added oil, but you know, peanut butter is really high in fat, so it's high in calorie density and fat. But if you're just using a little bit in a recipe or something, it's probably okay. You know, you're better off eating a whole nut than you are eating a nut butter, just because the whole nut, you know, you're chewing it and there's little pieces that go down and they're not fully digested and end up in your stool because it's in, you know, basically it's in a suspended state. Whereas if you're using a nut butter, it's more absorption, kind of like that analogy of, you know, if you take a block of ice on a hot summer day and put it out on your lawn, it's going to take a long time to melt. Whereas if you put shaved ice and throw shaved ice out on your lawn, it's going to melt really fast. And so melting really fast means it's faster absorption. It's more likely to give you pleasure in your brain. It's more likely to raise your blood sugar and your insulin levels because it's fast absorption. Whereas a whole nut, if you eat just a small handful of whole nuts, it's going to be more like that block of ice. It's going to melt really slowly. It's not going to, you know, hit that pleasure center the same way in the brain. It's not going to cause your blood sugar and your insulin levels to spike as high. But both foods are still high in fat and high in calorie density. And so if you're trying to lose weight, trying to reverse insulin resistance and your diabetes, then you want to be really, really careful with nuts, seeds, and especially the nut butters.
And also, in regard to like a whole grain, I'm assuming that 100% whole wheat, you know, in a bread, if that's the very first thing, is that okay? I usually have one slice of bread a day with the peanut butter on it for lunch.
And so the bread's the exact same thing as the analogy with the block of ice and the shaved ice, because you know the whole wheat bread, it is healthy food. There's nothing wrong with the whole wheat bread, but it's going to be more likely to hit the pleasure center in the brain. It's more likely to spike the sugar and the insulin levels because it's faster absorption. You took a whole wheat berry that was a whole intact grain, it's refined down into flour, even though it's a whole wheat flour, and then it's that fast absorption again. So, you know, it's just a matter of, I mean, if you're able to achieve your health goals with a little bit of nut butter and a little bit of bread now and again, then great, because there's nothing unhealthy about the whole wheat bread with the nut butter, but it's just have to look at what's going on with your blood sugars and your medical conditions and whether it's keeping you from achieving your health goals. That's where you got to look at it one food at a time, one item at a time to figure out, hey, am I achieving my health goals even including this? And if so, then great, it's nothing wrong with it from a health standpoint. But if it's keeping you from reversing the diabetes, getting off medications, then that might be something to look at to reduce or get rid of. But you have to look at it compared to other things. I mean, if someone's eating a little bit of whole wheat bread with some peanut butter on it, but they're still eating bacon, eggs, sausage, cheese, then those things are much more important to get rid of before worrying about the whole wheat bread with the nut butter, if that makes sense.
Well,
I
have a funny story.
So Dolly,
Charlie?
I'd like to ask you to think about, is there any replacement for that bread and peanut butter or butter, nut butter? Is there anything that you could focus on that you would think that might be able to replace that might be healthier? Give it some thought. I'm not going to tell you that there is or there isn't, but I ask you to give it some thought. Yes, Jerry, and then Ken.
About 60 years ago when I got married, I really didn't know what wasn't a cook then either. And I called my mother-in-law one time and I said, what is this, this little kit that you get for the kitchen stove? And I put grease in there. I said, what the hell am I going to do with that grease? And she says, well, if you fry an egg or you make a hamburger or a pork chop or something, then you put that in the pan first. And I said, it hasn't been refrigerated. And she said, well, we've been doing it that way for years. I said, And I took the whole thing, the container, I just threw it in the garbage like that. I thought, no, And so that was the beginning of the end as far as meat was concerned for me. And I'm grateful. I couldn't imagine keeping that and not refrigerating it and using it to start other meals. It just blew my mind.
Okay, Ken.
Well, I didn't eat any oil, nut butters, anything like that for months. And then I feel really ignorant because all of a sudden I was introduced by an associate at Market of Choice to this wonderful machine that turns peanuts into peanut butter, and there's nothing added. So I suppose a tablespoon of that is like eating a half a cup of peanuts, but that's manageable. So I feel like I can have some peanut butter once in a while, but it's just eating peanuts. I was just excited to discover that thing. Sure is neat to watch.
It is neat to watch, but in terms of health benefits, what do you think?
Oh, it's the same thing as eating peanuts.
Is it the same in terms of the calories you absorb and the fat that you absorb, or is it which is less and which is more?
So you said if I eat the whole ones, then some of it goes through my stool and I get the satisfaction of eating it without it absorbing into my body.
Exactly. And not only you get the satisfaction of eating it, but the bacteria in your microbiome get those chunks of peanut or nut, and they use those as fiber to produce butyrate and serotonin and the extra fiber that you need in the diet.
Well, fortunately, I didn't buy much, but I did enjoy holding that handle down.
All that's in our rice tonight.
We have replaced butters and with hummus. And Marilyn puts different flavors in it. She made some dill hummus just recently, but on toast.
That was from Sherelle.
If I'm having toast, I just put hummus on it, replaces the butter.
Yeah.
Doesn't taste like butter, but it moistens the bread. It makes it, I like a little piece of toast with my oatmeal, and the hummus fits in with that flavors and that texture that I'm looking for. So the hummus works great. You can spread it on everything.
Yeah.
Great suggestion. It really is a healthy choice. And we had a video which we're going to play maybe next time on diabetics should eat their pulses. And hummus is one of the pulses, legumes, dried beans. There is another question here about what do you think was the reason Stu lived decades longer than expected before going whole food plant-based? Luck, I guess. I don't know why he survived past the time that most of the insulin diabetics lived, or maybe the doctor who told him that was way off base. I don't ever remember telling a diabetic you only have 20 years to live because you have insulin diabetes, but that's what his doctor told him. So maybe it was just a misstatement by the provider who he cared for.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question for Marilyn. Marilyn, what did you say you use? You use hummus somehow, but how did you make that substitute for ricotta?
Oh, I use tofu for that, and I use nutritional yeast because nutritional yeast gives it kind of that cheesy flavor. And then it comes out with the same texture as your ricotta, so you could just plop it all over your lasagna layers. And then I use spinach in between the layers because we like spinach. Make sure it's chopped spinach though, because the whole leaves are real stringy when they pull out. They're not so good.
Can you get whole wheat lasagna noodles?
Yeah. Yeah. You can get just about any kind of lasagna noodles. My daughter goes to Whole Foods and she gets some made with chickpea because she can't have gluten. I think it's chickpea.
Well, that's basically hummus.
Okay, everybody, it's been great. We've gone about 10 minutes past what our usual time is. I don't know, Scott, if you have any wise words to end this with, but next week we're going to be doing, a question and answer over the topics that we've had over the last couple weeks, the diabetes, and we look forward to that. And we have a few more videos in case there aren't enough questions, but if there are, we'll just stick with the questions.
No, it sounds great. Yeah.
So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you all for your input. It's been fun.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Yes.
We'll see you next week. See you
We'll
in the
see you
movie.
guys in the movies.
Okay.
Thank you. I really appreciate how you conduct these discussions. They're really very, very beneficial. I've listened to a lot of different things online about whole food plant-based, and you guys make it really doable. You're not fanatical about it. You give the basic, medical information, the health information, and do it in a variety of ways. And you're just gems. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate your kind words. Thank you so much.
Yes. Makes us want to teach another class.
Good, good. We want you to.
We're here.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for not selling supplements, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.